It take a hoe to birth a hoe, your mama hoe and you a bitch.
These hoes can't address me. Bank account, that's my bestie. Cartier is caressing. Boss, I'm undressing. No, you can't get a shout out. I'm surprised you're allowed out. Don't make me get loud now. Hate her up like the chow down. Depressed. I'm not, I take my man. That man is in distress. He ain't getting no head. I said them hoes depressed. I'm not, I take my man. I beat that bitch to death. JK, I take my meds. You got the hate and the jealousy. This ain't no Kikos, don't copy me. Hating on me that you can't even read. I'm popping my pussy when I hit the category.
Right now, my bars make money. Chinchilla and all that shit funny. Let the hoe know that shit ain't funny. Hoe like a nose, better get to running. Bunny, 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 what you gonna do next? My niggas fucked up from stepping on necks. Checking on my videos, I check. When it come to Lemon Square Squad, do it first. When it come to Lemon Square Squad, did it first. Hoes try to copy me, hoes do it worse. When you're that bitch, that's car for the Porsche. I'm the main dish and they hors d'oeuvres. Yes, I ate, I bite, I chew. That's just what bad bitches do. We look like we bought a zoo. Hoe run up, what she gon' do? JK, I take my house depressed. I'm not, I take my meds. That man is in distress. He ain't getting no head. I said them hoes depressed. I'm not, I take my meds. I beat that bitch to death. JK, I take my meds. You got the hate and the jealousy. This ain't no Kikos, don't copy me. Hating on me that you can't even read. I'm popping my pussy when I hit the category. Bitch. Walk, hair flip. I am that bitch. I run shit. Bitch, get a grip. Beside vacation. Call the lady, got a situation. Just got married to a Caucasian. Bitch, I'm taking all the medication. I'm feeling all the sensations. I got the right combination. Unleaded acceleration. Information. House depressed. I'm not, I take my meds. That man is in distress. He ain't getting no head. I said them hoes depressed. I'm not, I take my meds. I beat that bitch to death. JK, I take my meds. You got the hate and the jealousy. This ain't no Kikos, don't copy me. Hating on me that you can't even read. I'm popping my pussy when I hit the category.
Run up, little bitch, what the fuck you gonna do to me? I am the beginning of the end, like I'm puberty. I do not do beef, I do the whole British charcuterie. These used to wannabes are doing flights at the brewery. I take flights abroad, stacking up my strips like the shit's Cape Cod. Way but any bitch, wax on, wax off.
I take my meds.
And the pill's going pop, I'm staying out of it, but like go off. Ciao for now, that's why I'm thick like the plots. Only thing that you are giving is pause. Only thing that you are giving is up. Only thing that you are getting is cuts. Only thing that you got left in is dust. Bummies are busted, I'm cutting the fuck up with Bunny and Custom and Customs.
JK, I take my
Hoes depressed. I'm not, I take my meds. That man is in distress. He ain't getting no head. I said them hoes depressed. I'm not, I take my meds. I beat that bitch to death. JK, I take my meds.
Citalopram, lamotrigine, venlafaxine, fluoxetine, vitamin D and bupropion, a woman's multi and a loaded gun. This is red.
Hey, Hitler, he probably didn't even hate the Jews. That was just a Meth making you crazy, dog.
Will you get back in the closet? You deserve a fucking ass whooping. All of you, get back in the closet. Go fuck yourself.
How much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
They're evil. They are actively doing evil. So treat them like the evil that they are.
The right to exist argument has been used now to the point where what it's going to mean is that the Israel you're talking about will include the annexed and illegally occupied West Bank. It's very interesting, the Israeli government has never said where it thinks the borders of Israel really ought to be and what it would settle for. I think it would be an immense help if it tells us where it thinks Israel's boundaries should be. Every other country does do that.
It's time to stop pretending otherwise. It's time to be ruthless and time to afford them the same amount of grace that they give to their Palestinian victims, because they are only going to get more and more ruthless with their victims if you don't.
What's up? Welcome to the stream. Mic check 1 2. Alright, we'll start with headlines and then go into more specific stories. Is the music too loud? Oh, we got the electronic intifada today.
DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to restore access to the United Nations to deliver food and other basic necessities into the Gaza Strip. The advisory opinion from the UN's top court also found Israel had not provided evidence to back its claims that the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, known as UNRWA, lacked neutrality, or that a significant number of its staff members were members of Hamas.
That doesn't mean you impede them. Even if they are, you don't use food as a weapon of war.
Iwasawa is president of...
No justification.
...the International Court of Justice.
In its final section on international humanitarian law, the court explains that custom international law prohibits the use of starvation of the civilian population as a method of warfare.
Israel condemned Wednesday's ruling, said it would not abide by the court's instructions. The Trump administration also condemned the opinion, with the State Department declaring it, quote, another corrupt ruling by the ICJ, unquote. In Gaza, an Israeli drone killed a Palestinian in Khan Yunis earlier today. Officials in Gaza say nearly 100 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli attacks since the U.S. brokered truce went into effect October 10th. Meanwhile, Palestinians in central Gaza on Wednesday interred the bodies of 54 unidentified Palestinians handed over by Israel in a mass grave. Many of the bodies showed clear signs of torture and execution. This is Rami Al-Farah, who tried and failed to confirm if his cousin's body was among those handed over by Israel Wednesday.
The signs of torture and brutal treatment on the body did not allow us to tell whether it was him or not. Our message and our demands to the world are to provide us with the means by which we can determine whether this person belongs to us or to someone else. The Israeli army knows these bodies are connected to people, but instead of names, they put out numbers. They left something harsh in our hearts, feelings of grief. Honestly, it's hard to bury a body when you don't know whether it's the right one or not.
Israel's Knesset has advanced legislation to apply Israeli sovereignty to all settlements in the occupied West Bank, a move that would effectively annex territory Palestinians want for a future state. The move prompted rare criticism from U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who departed for Israel Wednesday in a bid to prevent the U.S.-brokered Gaza ceasefire from further unraveling. Rubio Rubio's trip comes on the heels of visits by Vice President J.D. Vance and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Earlier today, Vance said he was personally insulted by the annexation vote, which came during his visit.
It was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it.
Separately, Israel's Supreme Court Wednesday further delayed ruling on a petition.
Yeah, just continue to be unhappy as you sit on your hands and do fucking nothing to stop this.
Calling on Israel to allow foreign reporters access to Gaza. The Foreign Press Association said it was disappointed by the additional month-long delay, which it blasted as a stalling tactic. Meanwhile, a group of 27 Democratic lawmakers has written to Secretary of State Rubio and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, urging them to secure the release of Mohammed Ibrahim, a teenage Palestinian-American citizen from Florida. He was arrested by Israeli soldiers who blindfolded and handcuffed him during an early morning raid on his family's West Bank home in February. Ibrahim spent his 16th birthday in an Israeli prison where he's been held without charge for nearly 8 months. The Pentagon confirmed Wednesday the U.S. launched strikes against 2 vessels in the Pacific off the coast of Colombia, killing 5 people, and claimed without evidence the boats were carrying drugs. This follows 7 strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. In the past month, at least 30...
I had heard that story about the kid, but I didn't know that it was for that long.
Wednesday, the U.S. launched strikes against 2 vessels in the Pacific off the coast of Colombia, killing 5 people, and claimed without evidence the boats were carrying drugs. This follows 7 strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean.
Did they report on this yesterday, or did this happen yesterday? I cannot keep up with the number of boats that they're fucking bombing, dude.
Carrying drugs. This follows 7 strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. In the past month, at least 37 people have been reportedly killed in international water.
Oh my God, this time you can see the boat flip. Jesus.
This month, at least 37 people have been reportedly...
Imagine getting hit with a munition so powerful that the water below you just flips your boat upside down because the missile has penetrated, exploded, and has made the water push upwards, flipping your boat, what's left of your boat.
Alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. In the past month, at least 37 people have been reportedly killed in international waters.
37 people.
In U.S. strikes. In response, Colombia's President Gustavo Petro said, quote, "It's murder. Whether in the Caribbean or Pacific, the U.S. government's strategy breaks the norms of international law," he said. President Trump met with NATO Secretary Mark Rutte at the White House Wednesday, shortly after the Trump administration and the European Union announced new sanctions on Russia's largest oil and gas companies. The announcement came as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Trump's proposal to freeze the current front lines in the war is, quote, "a good compromise," unquote. Meanwhile, Ukraine launched a strike against a Russian chemical plant on Tuesday using British long-range cruise missiles. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the Trump administration's lifting restrictions on Ukraine's use of such weapons, allowing it to strike targets deeper inside Russia. This comes as the Norwegian Refugee Council is warning millions of Ukrainian civilians could be left without heat, water, and electricity this winter due to Russian attacks on energy infrastructure. In the United States, federal government shutdown has entered its 23rd day. As a result, 60,000 aviation safety workers won't receive a full paycheck in the coming days. The authority that operates the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport is planning to provide non-perishable food items to federal workers who are struggling to buy groceries. Meanwhile, the National Nuclear Security Administration, the agency which oversees the nation's nuclear stockpile, has announced it's furloughed more than 1,400 workers, 3/4 of its staff. On Capitol Hill, the Senate's 12th attempt to end the shutdown failed Wednesday. Ahead of the vote, Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon delivered a 22-hour speech warning about President Trump's agenda.
Colleagues, I'm coming tonight to the floor of this Senate to ring the alarm bells because we have become an authoritarian nation over the last 9 months. We are deep into an authoritarian takeover.
The Trump administration's dispatching more than 100 federal agents to the San Francisco Bay Area as it seeks to ramp up immigration raids in Northern California. That's according to the San Francisco Chronicle, which reports the deployment is a likely precursor to President Trump deploying National Guard troops to San Francisco. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom blasted the deployment as, quote, right out of the dictator's handbook, unquote. In Illinois, protesters confronted masked federal agents Wednesday as they carried out multiple arrests in Chicago's Little Village neighborhood in the bordering suburb of Cicero. The agents were joined by Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, whose forces were recently reprimanded by a federal judge for violating a prior court order restricting the use of tear gas and other less lethal weapons on peaceful demonstrators, journalists, and clergy. Federal agents fired pepper spray at protesters who witnessed a car crash involving federal agents.
They are thugs and they could do whatever they want, and they crashed into an individual, arrested him with no probable cause, no warrant, and instead of the police department assisting the guy that got crashed, seeing if he needed medical attention, they arrested him.
Here in New York, protesters marched Wednesday in solidarity with the street vendors who were harassed and detained Tuesday by federal agents during immigration sweeps targeting Manhattan's Canal Street. This is Awa Ngam, a street vendor and U.S. citizen originally from Mauritania who witnessed a friend's arrest by ICE agents. She was ordered to show ID proving her immigration status.
I always felt safe in America. I feel safe. I love coming to America. America is losing that. It's losing that. And people have to say something. They have to not be scared. They have to stand up. The time is now.
Meanwhile, a Cuban man deported by the Trump administration to the southern African kingdom of Eswatini has gone on hunger strike to protest his imprisonment in a maximum security prison there. Roberto Mosquera del Paral is among 11 so-called third country deportees sent by the Trump administration to Eswatini, despite legal challenges by human rights groups who've called the deportations a violation of U.S. and international law. The North Carolina House of Representatives has approved a new congressional map that could give Republicans an extra seat in Congress. According to state law, North Carolina's governor, Democrat Josh Stein, cannot veto the redistricting plan. President Trump praised North Carolina's map on social media last week, saying it would give voters in the state, quote, the opportunity to elect an additional MAGA Republican in the 2026 midterm elections, unquote. It follows a similar effort by Texas Republicans earlier.
Look at all those made-up lines. What the fuck?
Midterm elections, unquote. It follows a similar effort by Texas Republicans earlier this year when lawmakers passed a congressional map that could give Texas's congressional delegation up to 5 more House seats. A month later, the Republican-controlled Missouri state legislature passed a congressional map that would turn Democratic Representative Emanuel Cleaver's district into a Republican-leaning seat. In labor news, the New York Times reporting Amazon's planning to replace more than 500,000 jobs with robots. The company's internal documents also reveal Amazon's robotics team plans to automate 75% of the company's operations. A Senate report released earlier this month, spearheaded by Senator Bernie Sanders, warned artificial intelligence and automation could destroy nearly 100 million jobs over the next decade. Peru's interim president, Jose Heri, is declared a 30-day state of emergency after weeks of anti-government protests led to the impeachment of the previous president. The state of emergency in Peru gives the government the power to send the army to patrol the streets and curb the right to protest. Peruvians had been demonstrating over the rise in organized crime and extortion. Over the past month, more than 200 people were injured in the protests. And White House officials say the entire east wing of the White House will be demolished for the golden gilded ballroom, which President Trump said yesterday will now cost $300 million, up from $250 million, which is up from $200 million. That's despite this pledge made by President Trump in July.
It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite.
The East Wing's demolition comes as the National Trust for Historic Preservation has asked the Trump administration to pause construction until the National Capital Planning Commission has completed its review of the project. In a letter, the trust said it was concerned the proposed 90,000 square foot ballroom will, quote, overwhelm the White House itself, unquote, since the White House is 55,000 square feet. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
It's going to make the power bill go up. I mean, heating an entire ballroom versus just like individual rooms is a lot harder to do.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
The final debate of New York City's closely watched mayoral race took place Wednesday night. Democratic Socialist State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani is the Democratic nominee. If he wins, he would become the city's first Muslim mayor. He faced off with Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa and independent candidate and former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who resigned in disgrace in 2021. This is part of one exchange, starting with Sliwa.
Adversaries have decided to bump chests with President Trump to prove who's more macho. You can't beat Trump. He holds most of the cards. He's already cut federal funding for Medicaid, for the SNAP program, and is threatening to cut funds for NYCHA. So if you're all of a sudden going to get adversarial, you're going to lose. And who gets hurt? The people of New York City. With Trump, it's always the art of the deal.
Hey, Mr. Cuomo. Yeah, the difference on this question is I've actually lived it, and I've done it with President Trump over many years through the most difficult situation that this country has gone through, COVID plus. You're wrong. You're going to have to confront President Trump. He is hyper-aggressive, and he is going to overstep his bounds. And you are going to have to confront him. And you can beat him. I confronted him, and I have beaten him. He was going to quarantine New York during COVID, and I stopped him. He was going to cut aid to federal programs, and I stopped him.
We first just heard from the Republican candidate for mayor, and then we heard from Donald Trump's puppet himself, Andrew Cuomo. You could turn on TV any day of the week, and you will hear Donald Trump share that his pick for mayor is Andrew Cuomo. And he wants Andrew Cuomo to be the mayor, not because it will be good for New Yorkers, but because it will be good for him. Look, Donald Trump ran on 3 promises. He ran on creating the single largest deportation force in American history. He ran on going after his political enemies, and he ran on lowering the cost of living. If he wants to talk to me about the third piece of that agenda, I will always be ready and willing. But if he wants to talk about how to pursue the first and second piece of that agenda at the expense of New Yorkers, I will fight him every single step of the way.
That was Zohran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo, and Curtis Sliwa at last night's mayoral debate. Later in the debate, Mamdani confronted Cuomo about his record.
Mr. Cuomo, in 2021, 13 different women who worked in your administration credibly accused you of sexual harassment. Since then, you have spent more than $20 million in taxpayer funds to defend yourself, all while describing these allegations as entirely political. You have even gone so far as to legally go after these women. One of those women, Charlotte Bennett, is here in the audience this evening. You sought to access her private gynecological records. She cannot speak up for herself because you lodged a defamation case against her. I, however, can speak. What do you say to the 13 women that you sexually harassed?
If you want to be in government, then you have to be serious and mature. There were allegations of sexual harassment. They were then went to 5 district attorneys, fully litigated for 4 years. The cases were dropped, right? You know that as a fact. So everything you just said was a misstatement, which we're accustomed to.
Everything that I stated was a misstatement?
Yes, because the cases were dropped. That's what happened.
So that's Andrew Cuomo answering Zohran Mamdani. This is another excerpt from the debate. This begins with former Governor Cuomo.
There is a tension between the city and the state. The city's arguing for its budgets, the state is saying no, and the city has been getting screwed by the state, and that has to change, and the city has to be doing better.
We just had a former governor say in his own words that the city has been getting screwed by the state. Who was leading the state? It was you.
Governor Hochul.
You were leading the state for
Governor
10 years,
Hochul.
screwing this city.
No.
You cut homelessness funding. You cut funding for the MTA.
You as a legislator.
You did all of these things, my friend.
That's the past 4 years. It's the past 4 years.
All of this comes as early voting is set to begin Saturday ahead of the November 4th mayoral election. In the final weeks, there's been growing pressure for Republican Curtis Sliwa to drop out. On Wednesday, Sliwa abruptly quit his job at WABC Radio during a live interview on the station, complaining that billionaire owner John Katsimatidis was backing Cuomo, along with other billionaires who've claimed they would leave New York if taxed too highly under Mamdani. Katsimatidis owns Gristedes and D'Agostino's, the grocery chains. For more, we're joined by journalist Ross Barkan, who's following all of this very closely. He's a columnist for New York Magazine, wrote a book on Cuomo titled The Prince, Andrew Cuomo, Coronavirus and the Fall of New York. His most recent book, Fascism or Genocide, How a Decade of Political Disorder Broke American Politics. Ross, welcome back to Democracy Now! Talk about the significance of this last debate and also, the significance of this race for the country with a Democratic socialist in the lead.
Say that the race is more significant than the debate. The debate was very interesting, but I don't think it will change all that much. I mean, time is running out for the race dynamics to shift. Zohran Mamdani holds a significant lead. Andrew Cuomo is in second. Curtis Sliwa, the Republicans, in third. He's not dropping out. Early voting is coming up very soon. I expect Mamdani to win. It's not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed in life, but he's got a great shot. And for the country and for New York City, it's quite significant. I mean, this is the first time an unabashedly left-wing socialist politician will get to hold a major executive office. Bernie Sanders is the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. Burlington, Vermont is the size of a few neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Zohran Mamdani is going to run one of the great and massive and important cities in the world, and all eyes are going to be on him. He's going to be controlling the largest police department in America, the largest education department, and he will be a leader. Whether he chooses to be a national figure or not, he is one. And so much will be riding on next year and beyond, assuming he wins in a few weeks.
And Ross, you mentioned that, of course, New York City has the largest police department in the U.S. And yesterday, during the debate, Zohran confirmed that he's asked Eric Adams' appointee, Jessica Tisch, to stay on as the New York Police Department's commissioner. If you could talk about the importance of him having done that.
Well, it's a fascinating choice. It brings great promise and peril as well. So Jessica Tisch is popular with the city's business and finance elite. She's popular with a lot of media members and editorial boards. She's someone who's had success in battling corruption in the police department. She was appointed last year after Eric Adams was indicted. And she is someone who's never walked the beat. She's Harvard educated. She's a billionaire. And she's politically a moderate. She does not share Zohran Mamdani's politics, but for him, having a commissioner like that can ease some of the fears among the many voters and donors who are wary of a 34-year-old socialist running.
It's like Obama picking Joe Biden, kind of.
The city. And it might allow him to maneuver on the rest of this agenda. He ran an affordability agenda. He wants to deliver on a rent freeze, on free buses, on a massive childcare expansion. And having Tisch there, though she's handling police, could be a way for him to maneuver with those other policy aims, because she will have at least placated momentarily some of his opponents.
Ross, you mentioned, of course, he has run entirely on an agenda of affordability, which includes a rent freeze. But this issue came up last night, too. The Rent Guidelines Board, how does that work? Who appoints its members? And how could it make it absolutely impossible for Zohran to go ahead with any kind of rent freeze?
So the Rent Guidelines Board determines the rent increases or lack thereof of the city's rent-stabilized units, of which there are a lot. There's roughly 1 million or so, at least 1 million tenants in rent-stabilized units. And the mayor appoints the members of the board. They do serve terms. There's talk of Eric Adams trying to staff the board as he leaves to make it harder for Mamdani in his first year to fill vacancies. But ultimately, it's a bit like the Supreme Court, where you get the appointment and you don't need the confirmation of any Senate or any body like that. And it's very easy for a mayor to shape a board. Bill de Blasio got 3 rent freezes out of his rent guidelines board. Eric Adams has hiked the rent on rent-stabilized apartments every single year as mayor. Michael Bloomberg hiked the rents quite dramatically. So a mayor has a lot of power to do this. So all of his campaign promises, this is one that in 4 years is quite deliverable.
I want to go back to last night's debate. This is Zoran Mamdani.
You will hear from Andrew Cuomo about his experience as if the issue is that we don't know about it. The issue is that we have all experienced your experience. The issue is that we experienced you taking a $5 million book deal while you sent seniors to their deaths in nursing homes. The issue is that we experienced you cutting funding for the MTA to send money to upstate ski resorts. The issue is that we saw you give $959 million in tax breaks to Elon Musk. The issue is your experience.
No, the only thing, the issue is you have no experience. You've accomplished nothing. You haven't proposed a bill on anything, and you still haven't said if you're closed strikers in 2027.
So that was Cuomo and Zoran Mamdani. Comment on that, Ross Barkan, but also your latest book is called Fascism or Genocide: How a Decade of Political Disorder Broke American Politics. You're not addressing directly the Mamdani candidacy, but what does his ascendancy say about the fracture within the Democratic Party nationally?
It is the sort of campaign that a few years ago would have been considered quite far-fetched, because Mamdani is pro-Palestine, openly pro-Palestine. And that was taboo in the Democratic Party until, maybe a year ago, maybe even less. And you saw, I write a lot about the uncommitted movement last year that challenged Joe Biden and the unrest, the DNC. And Mamdani is a continuation of that, and he is an apotheosis in some ways. You have a movement that was quite small and marginalized and had very few supporters at all. And now you have a possible future mayor of New York City who's not afraid to say free Palestine or support BDS or criticize Netanyahu, and has even called for Netanyahu's arrest. So that is significant. Andrew Cuomo is an Israel hawk. He's always been one. So Mamdani and Cuomo are completely on opposite sides on this issue. And Mamdani won a dramatic primary victory. He won by a lot. And if the polls are to be believed, and I think they are, if anything, they might be undercounting Mamdani's vote, especially his youth supporters, he's going to win again. So that's a very big deal for the pro-Palestine side in this fight.
And it's been remarkable that the 2 leading Democratic national figures, Hakeem Jeffries, right, represents the Democrats in the House of Representatives, and Chuck Schumer, have not endorsed Mamdani. Of course, he's gotten a lot of national endorsements from senators and Congress members as well. But Hakeem Jeffries has not yet?
No, they have not. Even the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, who's a centrist and very pro-Israel and has openly said she disagrees with Mamdani, has endorsed him. So it's not clear at this point what the calculus truly is, other than maybe they feel by endorsing Mamdani they could hurt Democrats in swing districts. It seems like they're overthinking it a bit. They're certainly both very pro-Israel. Schumer and Jeffries both one would characterize as Israel hawks. So Mamdani's politics make them uncomfortable. They're both from New York City, from Brooklyn, so they are ground zero for all this. But I think there are a lot of rank-and-file Democrats who are wondering why the leaders of the party can't endorse the Democratic nominee. Certainly, if Mamdani wins by a significant margin, they do look weak.
We want to go to another topic now, Ross. You have a new article for New York Magazine headlined, "Trump is Courting Catastrophe in Venezuela." And we want to ask you about this latest news we had in headlines. The Pentagon confirmed Wednesday that the U.S. launched strikes against 2 vessels in the Pacific off the coast of Colombia, killing 5 people, and claimed without evidence that the boats were carrying drugs. This follows 7 strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean before. So if you could comment on that.
It's quite dangerous and quite disturbing, and it runs counter to the image that Trump now is trying to propagate as being a peace president for working towards a ceasefire, or achieving one, a tentative one, at least a peace agreement in the Middle East between Hamas and Israel, which I actually think Trump deserves some praise for. I have said that. But Venezuela here, you have a situation where the United States seems fairly committed to attempting regime change. And whatever, however horrific Maduro is, and I do believe he's a dictator who has really eviscerated his people,
but I still see that I need my people, all of my people, to taste it, so I can really enjoy it. But again, those videos are not us, you know what I mean? We used to be so generous to invite people for many dishes at once. We have a very good kitchen, the Palestinian kitchen, with historic dishes and meals. And then I will back to your question about the feeling, that feeling of uncertainty that most of survivors in Gaza, and I am not sure if we can call ourselves survivors, because it's not clear what that means to the majority of us. And if you allow me to just continue reading what I wrote, like most survivors in Gaza have been living with a strange, hard-to-name feeling since the ceasefire was declared. Something between disbelief and disorientation. It's as if we are all stuck in a quiet limbo. Something we can't really explain it, Ali. We don't understand what is the real situation right now. Asking ourselves, what next? We wait for something unknown, uncertain.
It's trauma. I mean, everyone alive has been traumatized, one way or another. Bracing for the next trauma. Like an abused dog when you go to pet it. Like an abused person when you trigger them. I know this is cliche, but think of the children that have been traumatized, dude. Every time they hear a plane, or even when something falls and clatters, maybe. Hear the thunder. The trauma is immeasurable. Let's go back to the beginning.
I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleagues Ali Abunimah, John Elmer, Asa Winstanley, and Tamara Nassar. It's day 748 of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Coming up, our longtime contributor Assam An-Nabi, a writer, engineer, and spokesperson for the Gaza City municipality, joins us to talk about what has and has not changed for people in Gaza after 2 weeks of a ceasefire that Israel has continued to violate. Later on in the program, John will report on the Israeli military's line of withdrawal based on the first stage of the Gaza ceasefire agreement. But first, let's take a look at the news. Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Since the ceasefire came into effect on October 10th, Israel has continued to violate the basic terms of the agreement, including killing and injuring Palestinians while maintaining restrictions on food and humanitarian aid entering Gaza. On Friday, October 17th, at least 11 people from the same family were killed in an Israeli attack on a car in Al Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City. Journalist Saad Hezbollah filmed relatives mourning over the bodies of their loved ones at Al Ahli Arab Hospital in Gaza City. Of the 11 people killed, 7 were children between 5 and 13 years old. Hezbollah said that Israel...
Did you see those captions, dude? What the fuck? That's half of a body right there. Oh my fucking god, dude.
Humanitarian aid entering Gaza. On Friday, October 17th, at least...
Hamoud is whole, but there was only half of Nasir.
11 people from the same family were killed
Nasir.
in an
Look, who's inside that bag, cousin?
Israeli attack on a car in Al Zaytun.
Shaban, leave it. We know that they're in there.
Neighborhood of Gaza City. Journalist
Is Hamoud's whole body in there? Yes, he's whole.
Hezbollah filmed relatives more.
There's only half of Ibrahim.
Mourning over the bodies of their loved ones at Al Ahli.
The rest of Ibrahim's body is with Ihab in the same bag. Exactly.
Arab Hospital in Gaza City. Of the 11
While Jumana is missing.
people killed, 7 were children between 5 and 13 years old. Hezbollah said that Israel bombed the vehicle as they were checking on their destroyed home. Quote, they had hoped the war was over, that they could return to live upon the rubble of their house. But the occupation's artillery ended their lives the moment they arrived, he stated on social media. Gaza's civil defense stated that rescue workers recovered the bodies of 9 of the victims, but the bodies of 2 children...
That was crazy. Seeing a body that just ends in a blur at the waist, in the torso. Fuck.
Children were not recoverable as they were torn apart due to the intensity of the bombardment and the difficult field and environmental conditions in the area. On Sunday...
I think about the video of that one older Palestinian gentleman who was walking around with a box to show what was left of one of his loved ones, and it was just like he was just holding up dusty strips of flesh and showing it to people. It was insane. So when they say blown apart, they mean fucking blown apart.
Today, October 19th, Israel attacked areas across the Gaza Strip with more than 20 airstrikes after the Israeli army claimed that Palestinian resistance forces had fired on an Israeli tank in the southern city of Rafah. But the Qassam Brigades, the armed wing of the Hamas political party, said it was unaware of any events or clashes taking place in the Rafah area and noted that Israel had already been violating the terms of...
And if you think I'm being graphic and that's stomach churning, good, it's your tax dollars. Get mad about it. Their blood has stained your hands on account of your government. So, what are you going to do about that? Are you going to silently reap the benefits of colonialism? What little they offer you? Or are you going to stand with your fellow human beings in solidarity against fascism? The choice is yours, and inaction is a choice.
Of the ceasefire. According to DropSite News' Ryan Grimm, the explosion was caused by an Israeli vehicle running over ordnance as the army was demolishing what was left of houses in Rafah. Grimm said, quote, soon after the explosion in Rafah, I'm told by a source familiar, the White House and Pentagon knew that the incident was caused by an Israeli settler bulldozer running over unexploded ordnance, contradicting Netanyahu's claim that Hamas had popped up from tunnels. Nevertheless, Israel took the opportunity to conduct massive airstrikes as Prime Minister and war crimes fugitive Benjamin Netanyahu announced that all crossings into Gaza for humanitarian aid were once again being closed as collective punishment. Journalist Ahmed Nofal uploaded this clip of the aftermath of an airstrike in the Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza as houses and shelters caught fire. Al Jazeera's Hani Mahmoud said on Sunday that, quote, fear and panic dominated the scene among people in Gaza during the series of airstrikes. He said, quote, we've been approached by people, including women and children, who are asking us if the war is back on. Some said now that Israel has got the captives back, they're back at killing us. That's the kind of sentiment we're hearing. People are very concerned in Gaza City after they returned following the ceasefire. They're cornered in this area. The sound of drones can be heard hovering above. The level of fear is on the rise. Let's not forget Palestinians have endured 2 years of war. They were not even given the chance to breathe with constant attacks. Israel targeted Palestinians in drone strikes while they were retrieving bodies in earlier attacks. Reporter Mohammed Abu Salama captured video of people at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City after Palestinians were targeted multiple times by an Israeli reconnaissance drone near Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. The Gaza government media office stated on October 19th that Israel had committed 80 violations of the ceasefire since it came into effect, and that at least 97 Palestinians were killed and 230 injured in those 9 days.
Sorry, I was muted. These captions are harrowing as well.
Media office stated on October 19th
the drone struck us with 3 to 4 bombs while we were carrying the martyrs.
That Israel had committed 80 violations of the ceasefire since it came into effect.
So we put him down to run, and it dropped another one right between the martyrs.
Palestinians were killed, and
but it didn't explode. It landed between the 2 martyrs. But it didn't explode.
230 injured in those 9 days since.
It struck us 4 times while we were carrying the bodies. Jesus. Monsters.
Israel's violations, the media office explained,
retrieving them so that we can reach the hospital.
Shooting, bombing, the use of fire belts, and...
I mean, 4 times they tried to assassinate the young men.
The arrest of Palestinians, reflecting, quote...
who were trying to retrieve the bodies with us.
Clear desire for escalation.
Praise be to God Almighty.
The media office noted that these attacks had been carried out by occupation forces, quote, using military vehicles and tanks positioned on the outskirts of residential neighborhoods.
I don't know what to say, dude. To see a grown man crying from fear is like... And imagine you're this young man looking up to your elders for strength. And they're just as scared as you are. And they're just as scared as the kid, you know?
Hoods, electronic cranes equipped with sensors and remote targeting devices, and combat aircraft and quadcopter drones that continue to fly over residential areas on a daily basis, carrying out shooting operations and direct targeting of civilians. The Israeli military ended the October 19th bombing campaign after the U.S. White House appeared to have stepped in, Ryan Grimm added, conveying to Israel that they knew what happened with the Rafah explosion. Netanyahu said he would reopen 2 humanitarian aid crossings. However, Israeli forces in the so-called yellow boundary line within Gaza have continued to shoot and kill Palestinians. Mahmoud Bassal, the spokesperson for Gaza's civil defense, said that 4 Palestinians were killed on Monday in 2 separate attacks, both times by Israeli gunfire, as they were returning to their neighborhoods to check on their homes. Israeli forces claimed they opened fire on Palestinians who allegedly crossed the yellow line and approached troops in Shujaiya. Al Jazeera reported that Hamas denied knowledge of any such attack, with one Palestinian official accusing Israel of fabricating pretext to resume the genocidal war on Gaza. On Wednesday, October 22nd, another Palestinian was killed by the Israeli army in the Tufah neighborhood of Gaza City. The Sulala Society, an animal rescue and rehabilitation organization in Gaza, announced that one of their veterinarians, Dr. Muad Abu Rakba, was killed last weekend while trying to go back to his home and gather some belongings. His home was reportedly near the so-called Yellow Line boundary in Jabalia in northern Gaza. John will have much more on the Yellow Line and its implications later on in the program.
What did this guy do? Fixing a cat.
John will have much more on the Yellow Line and
healing a donkey. Gentle soul. What did this guy do to deserve that? What did he do?
and its implications later on in the program. More Palestinian bodies were returned to Gaza by the Israeli military, showing indications of torture and field executions. Euromed Human Rights Monitor said that its field team observed Israel's handover of 120 bodies from the Gaza Strip.
This has been a days-long process that we've heard about, but good God, man.
Their missions. Mahmoud Bassal said that an estimated 10,000 Palestinians remain buried underneath the rubble, and he condemned the international community's double standards as members of the...
That's much better than what we had before the ceasefire, but it's still well below our target, which is around 2,000 tons every day. Severe amount of destruction makes it, almost impossible to get to this goal of 2,000 tons unless you are able to utilize all crossing points.
The iceberg, in which the Hind Rajab Foundation publicly revealed the identities of the commanders and of tank crew member Itai Kukurkopf. The remaining 22 names have now been submitted confidentially to the ICC and will be made public progressively as national-level complaints are filed in different jurisdictions, the foundation states. Diab Abu Jaja, the foundation's director, said, quote, "This is not only a legal act, it's a revolt against the global order of impunity. They believed Hind's murder would be without accountability. We are proving them wrong, step by step. 24 names are now before the ICC, and more will follow in national courts. Justice is not a favor we ask, it is the inevitable reckoning of truth." And on Wednesday, the International Court of Justice issued its advisory opinion on the obligations of Israel in relation to the presence and activities of the United Nations, other international organizations, and third states in and relation to the occupied Palestinian territory. A brief document that concludes and reaffirms that Israel is an occupying power and is acting in violation of international law. Former UN official and frequent guest on the Electronic Intifada's livestream, Craig Mokhiber, stated on social media that, quote, the ICJ has just rejected all objections and spurious defenses and found that the Israeli regime is in violation of international law in its obstruction of aid, its attacks on UNRWA and other agencies.
Okay, we heard about that on Democracy Now! We have heard about that earlier in the week. These are attacks on the West Bank that they're covering. Watching that woman raise her fist to the IDF soldier is incredible.
Assaulting Dawood's wife and then a 42-year-old man, Majid Dawood, was shot and killed by Israeli soldiers who then dragged his body across the city and then beat his wife before handing over his body. Journalist Abu DM captured the Israeli soldiers assaulting Dawood's wife and trying to rip her husband's body away from her. And in the village of Tormosaya, Israeli settlers attacked Palestinians who were harvesting their olive trees, with one settler brutally beating a middle-aged woman, Afaf.
We saw that. What is this?
Friend's house and celebrate together. Where some of the Gaza Sunbirds, a paracycling team, brought long-awaited meals of chicken and rice to their friends this past week, as finally some food staples were brought into Gaza. One of the young men says, while holding a beautiful plate of roasted chicken, I swear I've forgotten how it tastes. Now I'm going to remember what it tastes like. They knock on the door to their friend's house and celebrate together.
ايش اخي؟ بالراحه بالراحه شباب. محدش يسمعنا. هو حدا وين اكرم؟ وين اكرم؟ اكرم تعال يا اكرم. اكرم اخي. شباب ايش الدنيا فوق؟ لبيك اللهم لبيك. هيك بنقول ايش؟ هيك الهدنه دخلت حيز التنفيذ يا شباب.
And journalist Sameh Ahmed filmed his young daughter Liane entertaining.
He said, what if they stop this ceasefire tomorrow? He said, oh no, inshallah.
Herself and her dad by pretending that the window in the cloth tent they are using as a shelter is a television screen. Sameh says, quote, my little girl Liane tries to create her own small world of joy inside the tent. With no electricity or television, she found in the tent's window her own screen. She stands before it, dancing and playing, asking me to sit and watch what she calls the TV. In every movement, there's a simple yet painful message. The children of Gaza need life, play, and education, just like all the children of the world. And that's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza. You're watching the Electronic Intifada live stream. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleague Ali Abunima. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Nora. Those chickens look good. I'm not going to lie.
I know, they looked really good.
Yeah, well, it's happy to, it's great to see people having moments of joy and happiness, but as we're going to discuss, it's so fragile, and that's certainly something we're going to talk to with Asim and Nabi when we get him back.
Why? Because you're under arrest for 4 offences. Malicious communications on screen and for inciting racial hatred. I'll explain to you everything. I need to get custody because, like I said, I don't know what's in the house. So Section 1 of the Malicious Communication Act and Section 137 of the Misuse of Public Communications Network. Again, on the 21st of July, at a pro-Palestine protest which took place outside the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in King Charles Street, he gave a speech which amounts to calls for the eradication of Israel and implied support for all those involved in armed resistance against Israel.
Israel? For Israel, the entity of Israel, the state. Israel, another place?
Sorry.
I thought it's for UK.
And implied support for all of those involved in armed resistance against Israel. No, including organizations such as Hamas. Again, like I was talking to the police when I gave that. You say that this is what you're doing to Israel. We're Palestinians. We're not going to talk and we've had our family members and friends murdered. Are you doing this for Israel? We're not to NP. We're treating comments that could be interpreted as anti-Semitic. To us, he's treating.
Wow.
Tropes that could be considered grossly offensive in character. On the 7th of October, we posted a variety of communications which demonstrated support for Hamas attack on Israel. An attack which involved murder, rape, and kidnapping of Israeli citizens, all of which may be considered grossly offensive in character. Search you as well. She has combinations happen. You won't be going through your stuff. Yeah, that's fine. You don't know what might be around. This is what the UK does to their doctors. Yeah. Their doctors that are Palestinian, who have had family and friends murdered, and who are anti-genocide. That's it. That's all we advocate for. We're just against murder. Your medicine, just listen to me.
Take some with us, but you won't be able to see anything, see the nurse, because we don't know what it is, because I'm not a doctor, I don't understand.
I'm a doctor.
You,
it's called listed.
Yes, unfortunately I'm not.
It's labelled.
We don't know you, we don't know who you are at all. So
They're trying to say she has drugs? What the fuck?
At least she's a respected doctor. Should be respected in UK. And you might also to make this neutral. She just tightened them. Can we just have this on record? I know you're doing this for the Israeli Jewish lobby. So you can get an arrest on me before my tribunal on Thursday. A doctor for 7 years, and I've never harmed anybody, never had any patient complaints. And this is what the British state is doing.
Yeah, so that was the video of her arrest from Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning, and in one of those videos she actually says, "I've just woken up," so it seems that it was an early morning raid, though of course she's a medical doctor and you know, like most medical professionals, work shifts, so I can't say exactly when she was raided, but certainly they seem to catch her unawares. So, you know, it's unfortunately this is becoming an increasingly familiar sign, you know, early morning raids of people, of Palestine solidarity activists and professionals. And of course, readers and viewers will be familiar that I was, of course, raided just over a year ago at home.
I work with kids who are a group that would be targeted by this, and a lot of them have been expressing so much fear and anger, and I just feel like I would be remiss to not do my part because I can, and I'm not going to be taken. They are definitely scared. I hear third graders comparing their skin color and wondering who's the most at risk, you know what I mean? Like, these kids are fucking terrified.
You want to see what real independent journalism funded by the people for the people looks like?
You ever heard a story like
The intro was so bad on Status Quo, man.
Colin, Claudia, and Olivia. And like I said, first question, why did you guys want to be out here today? Why was it important to put yourselves here outside this ICE facility today?
It's critical that we share that the state troopers and Broadview police are helping ICE break the law and kidnap Illinois residents. They are kidnapping people on the streets, they are shooting people, and we need to stop it.
Yeah, I want to note that that's not an exaggeration. Anyone watching this at home probably has seen now video after video of ICE kidnapping, abducting people off of the street, profiling them based purely on the color of their skin, where they live, the job they do, demanding papers. We've talked to people in some of these neighborhoods here in Chicago who are talking about, I'm carrying my birth certificate on me just out of an abundance of caution so that they have no excuse to disappear me into the immigration system. So just to...
Yeah, something about that arrest of the Palestinian doctor inside her own home for nothing, for literally nothing, is, I don't know, it just reminded me of ICE. Just made me want to check in on what's going on with ICE. Something about it. Gave me some association.
The British police and had my devices seized. Now, after, you know, Dr. Al-Adwan is a very well-known personality on Twitter and in Palestine solidarity circles in the UK, and after Tuesday's raid, there was a lot of support for her online amongst Palestine solidarity activists and other doctors. So we've got a few of those tweets. There. Amar Kazmi said that he was appalled, and he pointed out that Dr. Rahmi has been doxxed and has faced persistent death threats. The next person also supporting her was Dr. Yipeng Ji, of course, a Chinese-American doctor who's actually been in Gaza, of course. We'll be familiar from our previous coverage of that, of Norway's coverage of health professionals in Gaza. And he points out that Western countries are busy punishing and criminalizing healthcare workers who stand for humanity, justice, and liberation for Palestinians, while continuing to send weapons. And Dr. Nina Jar said that, pointed out the irony that, or the injustice rather, that a British doctor could fly to Israel, join the Israeli occupation forces, and participate in the genocide in Gaza and murder children, and yet be welcomed back and allowed to practice in British hospitals with no consequences. But a British doctor who speaks out against the same genocide gets arrested. Saeed Siddiqui is an activist in the Green Party, a former Green Party candidate for Parliament, called absolutely scandalous and pointed out that a similar thing had happened to him due to political interference by Labour Party politicians. And finally, Liane Mohammed. Liane Mohammed is a British Palestinian activist who actually came very close in last year's general election to unseating Wes Streeting, the British government's health secretary, and she called it a political arrest just 2 days before her tribunal, said it was nothing short and shocking, and called Wes Streeting a shameless defender of the genocidal state. Now, in that video that we just saw a few moments ago, it's quite notable what the police are accusing Dr. Rahmeh of. They say that she was being arrested for quite malicious communications and quite inciting racial hatred, and they clarified later in the video that the community's alleged communications were to MP Wes Streeting comments that could be interpreted as anti-Semitic, and they also, another notable thing was that they also alleged that she made comments on October 7th supporting what they called the Hamas attack on Israel, which they claimed involved, quote, murder, rape and kidnap. Well, this shows, as we've covered on this live stream repeatedly, the idea that there was rape by Palestinian fighters on October 7th, 2023 is a complete fabrication, which has been debunked time and time again by us and by other independent media. As we've repeatedly covered, there is still absolutely no evidence, no reliable evidence whatsoever of even a single rape taking place on October 7th, 2023. And actually, there's no allegations of rape. There's no concrete allegations of rape. There is neither a named nor an anonymous victim of rape on October the 7th, 2023 that has ever come out in the press anywhere. So, you can go to our past reports about that. So it's very significant that this lie about this deadly genocidal lie, this warrant for genocide pushed by the Israeli state, is now being used to arrest a British Palestinian doctor in the UK. Now, Dr. Al-Adwan has been very vocal online about her support for her people in Gaza and the rest of Palestine, and against the influence of the pro-Israel lobby in the UK. And because of that, she seems to be the current public enemy number one of the Israel lobby and his political servants in the UK. Now, the wider context here, in her case, is that the anti-Palestinian lobby group UK Lawyers for Israel referred to her, was the one who referred her to the GMC in the first place, the General Medical Council, which is the regulatory body which decides who can practice medicine in the UK. And this was purely over her views, over her opinions and her expressed opinions. She wasn't accused of any medical malpractice, yet despite a massive national media campaign against her, with dozens of scare stories in the national press, she won her case at the GMC last month. And as her lawyers explained in a Twitter thread, the tribunal, the independent tribunal system, concluded on the 25th of December exonerating her. And they found that her social media post had posed no threat to patient safety, that she had had zero complaints from any patients, and there was no evidence of misconduct, and that her right to free speech was protected under the law. And yet, in a striking abuse of the supposedly independent tribunal system, she was re-referred to the GMC 12 days later, and based on no new information, they just were considering the same evidence over again. And this came after more pressure from Israel lobby groups, including UK Lawyers for Israel again, and the so-called campaign against anti-Semitism. And this is one of the things they've written about her online. And of course, viewers may remember that the campaign against anti-Semitism, the badly named campaign against anti-Semitism, which is actually a campaign against Palestinians, is the same group that, and it's an Israeli state-funded group indirectly via the Jewish National Fund. Viewers will remember that it boasted in December 2019 to have slaughtered Jeremy Corbyn at the ballot box. That was the words of one of their key campaigners, activists, one of their key figures, Joe Glassman. The Israeli pressure was then implemented by Wes Streeting, the Labour government's health secretary, who's often touted as a possible successor to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And now, like the CAA, Streeting wrote to the GMC threatening a judicial review of the tribunal's decision to exonerate Dr. Al-Adwan. And her lawyers said these threats were based on extremely weak legal grounds, but were a clear indication of political interference. Now, as we've reported in the past, Streeting has, of course, for decades been a fixture of the UK's pro-Israel lobby, going back to his student days and his work against boycotts of Israel. And as Declassified UK reported last year in this story by their reporter at the time, Matt Kennard, Streeting has been financially backed by the pro-Israel lobby too, to the tune of at least £30,000 that we know of. I think that's around maybe $40,000, something like that. And this is obvious political interference in the ostensibly independent tribunal system, and of the worst kind, on behalf of a foreign genocidal power. Dr. Al-Adwan revealed online after her arrest on Tuesday that the police treated her badly, depriving her of water for 6 hours and even preventing access to her medication. They also made a point to say they're informing the DMC of the arrest. So this seems to be quite clearly an attempt to influence the decision of the GMC tribunal today. She was released later in that day, so she's not in prison any longer, thankfully.
Welcome to the stream,
Vitor. She very clearly was a political prisoner for those.
Always a pleasure.
She was very badly treated, and then they made a point of effectively stating they were trying to influence the GMC decision. So this seems to be a political arrest at the instigation of Wes Streeting, who acted in tandem with the pro-Israel lobby, and specifically with Israel lobby groups that have a direct link and a direct financial link to the state of Israel. So finally, we should mention that all of this is unfortunately just the tip of the iceberg, and over the last 2 years, there has been effectively an attempted purge of NHS doctors who expressed even the tiniest form of solidarity with Palestinians, including badges and lanyards. And this British Jordanian doctor, Dr. Nadim Haddadine, even said this week in this post on Twitter that he would never return to the NHS after being effectively driven out of the health service. And he said this was, quote, because the NHS currently does not feel like a self-employer for Arab doctors like me. We now have too many examples of them taking rapid and strong action against pro-Palestine doctors and remaining catatonic about complaints about pro-Israel doctors for it to be just a coincidence. As I've been warning for years, the purge that the Israel lobby funded Labour right-wingers like Wes Streeting started in the Labour Party membership during the Jeremy Corbyn years has now spread to wider society.
Thank you so much for that, Asa.
It's an extraordinary case that we're watching very closely. And that video of Dr.
Resistance
arrest
report
is absolutely incredible. Say these are the needs, and you send them to the various international parties. What do they tell you? Do they say we're working on it? Do they say? I mean, what's the answer from them? Why isn't it coming?
Okay, I would be clear about that. We prepare that list with them. We collaborate with them in every single need that we put it in the list. We discussed everything with them, even our plans about emergency stage, recovery, reconstruction, everything. We have been in discussion with them for a month now. But we got from them promises, that we would provide you with these needs after the Israeli permission. And I believe there is a political decision related to this. So the leaders of the world who already met and talked about the reconstruction of Gaza needs to take that decision right now, not tomorrow, today. They must take that decision to alleviate the suffering of people. We need bold actions. They already talked a lot, in the past 2 weeks, everyone talked about Gaza, the reconstruction of Gaza. Literally every one of the leaders talked about Gaza. But on the ground, nothing had changed. So, and also the NGOs must also put, more pressure on the Israeli side to let them allow these needs to enter. They can, they have the technology to manage anything, They can monitor it, they can manage it, they can control it. So we need, for example, the vehicles to collect and to transfer the solid waste. And we can provide you with any plan you want. But we just want to serve our people. That's it. We are a civil and humanitarian association, and we have been here since 1893. So, the Gaza municipality. So the only thing that we need now is to provide our people with their basic needs, nothing else. And to do that, to do our job, that we are willing to do it, we need that needs. So just let it enter Gaza Strip. And I am sure we have very good engineers and workers and technicians who would work day and night to serve the people, alleviate their suffering. Then we can move from the emergency stage to the recovery stage, preparing to the last stage of reconstruction.
It's so basic, and it's such a simple, demand to have the equipment to move these enormous piles of rubble so that people can live again. And yet it just keeps getting blocked. Awesome. I just remember a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, you posted a picture of one of the oldest trees in Gaza, the Sidra tree, I think, in Gaza City. And you're talking about how deep, its roots go. And there's like a lot of, mythological lore about the tree itself, that it was planted on top of the grave of a prophet or a saint. Tell us about your Gaza, about how you've experienced Gaza, and your message to people watching this around the world, and what you want them to, how you want them to talk about Gaza as well.
Okay, Gaza is a beautiful city, a very beautiful city. Lovely people, very friendly. We have a great kitchen with various, meals and dishes. A lot of olive trees in Gaza Strip, lemon, orange, strawberry, the best. Now what we can see is only destruction, horrors, graveyards, makeshift graves everywhere, in the streets, in schools, and in hospitals. You can notice that it's the land of graves right now. But still, you can feel the scent of the city, you can smell the scent of Gaza. Its soul is still here. I can feel it. Everyone can hear it. I think you can hear it too. You can feel that Gaza is an eternal city. Nobody can kill it. They have tried, not in this century, but many people tried to kill and destroy that city. And the cedar tree, is an example, Some people used to say that it's 1,000 years old. I spent my childhood nearby, maybe 500 meters from this city. And, nobody care about it, It's green. Nobody really care about it. So it has the ability to grow, to be green, with just only some love from its people. Like the water just from the sky. Her roots are too deep. Nobody can cut it or uproot it. And that's Gaza. The same in Gaza. So I always want the people to see Gaza as a beautiful city. And there is many, maybe negative stereotypes about Gaza and Gazans right now. I wish we can talk about it later, about the stereotypes that media gave about us. Maybe, intentionally or unintentionally, but we are a very beautiful people. Our girls are very beautiful. We are so generous. We love food. We cook the greatest food around the world. We brought you hummus, to the Western people. We brought you hummus.
I thought that was an Israeli dish. Awesome.
Everyone knows the truth, Ali.
We do. They do now.
That's a great joke, by the way. It's so. Look at the other side of Gaza. The smart people, the beautiful people, the nice city, the ancient buildings, our dreams, our children, our universities, our churches. We have a very beautiful church in the old town neighborhood. We have a very good communication and relation with Christians in Gaza City. We feel that we are same. I visited them in the last occasion. We celebrate together. Also, during the genocide, many Muslims evacuate to their churches. So we have a very good connection with everyone, even with Jews, by the way. So Gaza City is, again, it's a very beautiful city. Their people would would love to live in peace. They would rebuild their city, improve their situation, give their kids a very good education. And I remember that I wrote something about it in my last article to AI. And I said I would just end with this. Sorry if I take too long time.
No.
Our victory will not come because we are stronger,
Resistance
but because we
report is
are
right after
more
this.
rooted, because we love this land more than anything else. Because we know the face of this land like we know the faces of our children, because we have accepted the high price of freedom. And we pay it in grief and bread shared between tents and lullabies sung in the streets. We are not waiting for a final judgment from the World Court or a decisive vote at the UN. These are milestones, not destinations. What we are waiting for is the day when injustice ends, criminals are held accountable, and the world finally recognize the Palestinians' right of return and right to exercise self-determination throughout our historic homeland. We don't just fight to survive. We fight to remember, to rebuild, to belong. And we know that justice, though delayed, will not be denied forever. When will that day come? Maybe sooner than we think. Thank you.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Awesome. When I'm just going to tell you one thing. When Nora read from that article 2 weeks ago on the live stream, I texted Asim and I said, Asim, Nora is reading your beautiful article now. And you replied to me, Asim, and you said, I told Nora before that I like my articles even more when she reads them.
Yes.
And I hope you don't mind me sharing that. But I have to say, it is a
I don't share in public.
it is a special honor. It is a special honor for us to hear you reading those words, and they're even more beautiful to hear them in your incredible voice. And Asim, from all of us, I just want to thank you. Everyone, there's so much support for you and love for you in the comments now as we're speaking. And so on behalf of everyone watching and listening, we hear you very loudly. We send you our love, our support. We will continue to talk about Gaza and about Gaza City, the beautiful Gaza City, which I visited. And I remember seeing that ancient municipality building. Is it still there, Asim? The old...
Still there with some damages, but we already started the process to fix it. But ancient buildings need like a specific maintenance process. But we already started.
I'm glad. I was afraid to even ask.
Yeah.
And I know that life is, human beings are more important than a building, but at the same time, that building is a symbol of the continuity, the past, the present, and the bright future ahead for Gaza City. And the future of Gaza City is assured, I think, because it's in your hands, in the hands of your colleagues and the people who love it. So thank you for joining us, Asim. It's always our honor and our pleasure, and we hope that you will join us again. And each time we see you, the situation will be better and better.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much, Asim. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon. Oh, not me getting choked up. Thank you, Ali. God, what a spectacular human being.
Yeah. And Asim is right. Gaza is full of incredible people who deserve safety and life and everything that every human being deserves. And we have to, I can't say it enough, we have to keep Gaza front and center, as people have been doing. Before this genocide, there were people around the world who kept talking about Gaza when everyone else had forgotten about it, when it was under that siege, that for so many years, under blockade for so many years, and there were people who still insisted on talking about Gaza. There are so many more of us now. There are so many more of us, and we have to keep doing it.
Yep. Thank you. Let's bring John on to help. Hi, John.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
I love seeing Asim as well.
Yeah, he's
all right. Let's fight back.
Already rebuilding, of course.
Yeah, of course, that's what they do. That's right. So, John, you're gonna take us through kind of the details of whatever the hell this yellow line is. What is it? 56% of Gaza, something like that. They keep changing.
Yes, more than 50%.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be something that's in the news for a while.
Right.
So I figured I would do a briefing on it, just so we understand going forward what we're talking about when we talk about the yellow line.
That's great. Yeah, because as we pointed out in the news report, people going back to their homes to try and collect some of their belongings, to just even survey the damage of their neighborhood. If they, take a step in a 10-foot arbitrary way, they can get sniped. And that's been happening over the past week and a half, 2 weeks. So walk us through what the yellow line is, what it means, and where we're going from here.
Okay, let's do it.
Take it away.
All right, so you are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am John Elmer. This is the Resistance Report Ceasefire Edition for day 748 of Israel's genocide, and this is day number 14 of the ceasefire. I am reporting this on the 23rd of October. Just a brief introduction. As ever with Israel, and as Nora reported in her newscast, the ceasefire is not being fully adhered to. Core elements of it are not being adhered to by the Israelis.
Oh, you don't
since,
say.
It went into effect on October 11th. There's been more than 80 violations, 88 people killed, 315 people wounded, and most of these are around or on the so-called yellow line that I will break down today. The bodies of 15 Israeli captives have been returned to Israel. 13 bodies remain in Gaza, and after 30 more Palestinian bodies were returned to Gaza on Wednesday, that brought the number to 195 that had been returned from Israel, according to the Ministry of Health. There is no fixed timeline for the exchange of bodies. It's obviously an extremely difficult task to find these bodies. They were killed by Israel in buildings that have been collapsed. And as we know, there's 10,000 Palestinians as well buried in the rubble. And that has been a central feature of Israel's genocide. So there is no timeline on the return of the bodies, but the exchange rate is 15-1. And we saw of the 195 bodies that have been returned, Palestinian bodies, we saw them bound, tortured, executed, and in all manner of horrific conditions. The government media office also reports that less than 20% of the agreed upon aid has entered Gaza, only a fraction of the cooking gas. Cooking gas had not entered at all since March, and a small amount has entered, but not nearly what was agreed upon. And for their part, the Israeli prime minister said on Saturday on a popular talk show on his channel 14 that the war is not over yet. There are a few more things that need to be done, and we all know that. He said that on The Patriots on Saturday. IDF spokesperson Effie Defrin said, "We cannot live with Hamas ruling the Gaza Strip. If these goals are achieved through negotiation, that is enough. If not, we will fight. We will return to fight." And the defense minister, for his part, has instructed the IDF to prepare a comprehensive plan, quote unquote, to defeat Hamas in the event of the renewal of the war. So that's just by way of introduction. Now let's take a look at this key feature of the ceasefire agreement, which is this yellow line. We're looking here at a map that the Israelis released on the weekend. And for people not looking at this, or who are listening, this is a map of Gaza that shows no place names at all. It just has a yellow line that appears more or less arbitrarily drawn, and there's no indication of what it corresponds to on the ground in Gaza, which is notable because it's creating a free fire zone in that entire red area. The sort of agreed upon amount of space that that yellow line has is that Israel is under control of 53% of the Gaza Strip at this point. But this is the map that was released by the Israeli military to tell people where they could not go, and you can see clearly on this map that that this map lacks clarity. It's vague. Its fidelity is in question, so it's unclear. And this is after 2 years of genocide, where Israel ran the genocide based on a grid map that broke down the Gaza Strip into hundreds and hundreds of blocks, where they would evacuate people from blocks. That was the way they carried out the ethnic cleansing. And so it's just a pretty significant juxtaposition between the detail of the genocide and then this shoot to kill line that seems roughly randomly drawn. And the reason that it's randomly drawn is because it was effectively put together by Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff for Trump during these negotiations. And it reads, and you'll see in the maps coming up, that they look like they're drawn on the back of a napkin, which matches the way that Kushner and Witkoff have spoken in the media about how this negotiation was essentially phone calls between his rich real estate friends or golfing friends. But yeah, what stands out is clearly the lack of demarcation. The Israeli army radio commented on this and said that they had been interviewing soldiers, and the soldiers reported to army radio that the actual placement of the IDF outposts, forward operating bases, are considerably behind that line, in some cases several kilometers away. So the Israelis have been building over this genocide, and particularly over Gideon's Chariots operation, have been destroying from the border out, and they've made it a few kilometers, as far as 3 kilometers in places from the border that have been destroyed. And this yellow line is in advance of those lines, so it's even more favorable to Israel. It's presumably Trump doesn't know, Witkoff, Kushner don't know where those lines correspond to population centers. And so they allowed the Israelis to draw the line, and the Israelis drew the line to take the maximum amount of area. The implication of this, Army radio said, is that there are many areas that should be actually under IDF control, but there's no forces there as they're positioned behind that yellow line. But they use that line as a shoot to kill line, as Nora said, and as I just reported on the nearly 100 people that have been killed. Also, based on these interviews with soldiers that are based in the outposts inside Gaza, Army radio said that the soldiers told them at these posts that they report they are open to fire. They have free fire directives, meaning that there's no forces in front of them. This is how Army radio interprets that, which proves that the IDF has retreated much further than the yellow line. However, the thing that's notable to normal people who are not Israelis is that the soldiers have an open fire directive from those positions. Let's take a look at this next map here. This is from Trump's initial tweet. What is it? Truth Social, whatever they call a Truth Social post. He put this map on there, and you can see with this map that
I believe it's called truthing.
The Israeli, that the yellow line particularly up the spine of central Gaza and in the north, follows along a key strategic ridge along that line. The Israelis call it Ridge 70 because it's 70 meters above sea level. I think we have another one that zooms in a little bit closer on that you can see there. That's the Shujaiya neighborhood that Asim was just talking about. More than half of it is cut off and on the other side of the yellow line. But you can see that ridge line that runs across the top there of between the boundary of Gaza and Gaza City. And that is a strategic high point. And that has been the gateway to Gaza for the last 5,000 years. Like I said, the IDF calls it Ridge 70 because of its height. Getio Aeronaut wrote that the control of that ridge grants dominance over the observation line and fire in both directions. Thus, one of the IDF's first moves in recent operations was establishing 7 outposts, forward operating bases along it. And the other day, Yedio Aeronaut's military correspondent Yoav Zatoun wrote that, for example, the Yellow Line proposal, Israel's security buffer along the Gaza border has been doubled or even tripled in certain areas compared to its current configuration. Over the past year, most frontline IDF forward operating bases have been positioned 700 to 800 meters from the border. This distance was chosen for its topographical advantage. It allows forces to monitor and control Ridge 70, which overlooks Gaza. It also, on the other side of that, is Nahul Oz, which was a key Israeli military base for the northern command of the Gaza division that was overrun in minutes by Qassam fighters from Shujaiya. Yedio's supposition is that since Israeli officials were involved in shaping the map, it's reasonable to assume that part of their intent was to preserve gains made by the IDF during Operation Gideon's Chariots Part 1. These include the flattening of thousands of buildings in the neighborhoods and villages near the buffer zone within 2 to 3 kilometers of the fence. We'll see that coming up in other maps that I have here to show you this. But let's look at the Trump document, because this is what the maps were made of, number 3. And this is just, I don't know, the most Trump kind of map here. It's literally drawn from the back of a napkin. It just has 3 random lines that don't correspond to population centers, that don't show Israeli control. We're looking at a map that has a blue line or purple line there.
Because they don't care. It's not specific, because this is how they view the Gaza Strip.
The Israeli military was never on that point, so that is not their position right now, which that map identifies as the current IDF line of control. So it's a fictitious line there, and at the top it's called Trump: End of Gaza War. This map. So this is the map that is going to be what he talks about. His 3,000-year peace agreement is basically looks like it was drawn with crayons. It's really remarkable, but you can see where the roots of this were, and then the Israelis took that proposal and drew the maps where they wanted. So the way the proposal goes, and by looking at this map, the initial line of withdrawal is the yellow line. In the first phase, Hamas is expected to release all remaining Israeli captives, both living and deceased, while Israeli forces pull back to the line designated as the yellow line on the map. And the second stage, which is the reason why we're going to focus on this yellow line, is because the second stage of this proposal, the ceasefire agreement, is extremely vague and on the surface very unlikely. And so this yellow line may be something that we're following for many months to come. But the second line is supposed to be during that phase. The second phase is when the International Stabilization Force comes into play. But there's no timeline. There's no exact boundaries. There's no timing mechanism for the IDF withdrawals. The International Stabilization Force doesn't exist, and it has deep implications for sovereignty for Palestinians. We know that the Israelis are already complaining about that they don't want the didn't want Turkey involved in putting troops on the ground. But the resistance has been clear that there's no foreign force on the ground in Gaza. They've made that clear a number of times, and this international security force is devastating to Palestinian sovereignty. So we'll see how that goes in future negotiations. If we look now at number 5, you can see the original map. And this was the map that the Israelis, this is being shown on Israeli television. Yeah, that's right, number 4. Being shown on Israeli television. So this is the version of the map. You can see it's different than the first map we showed, because this was the map that was trying to show the Israeli population that that the Israeli military was still deep inside of Gaza, which was the terminology that Netanyahu wanted to spin for his victory, which everyone in Israel knows it's not a victory. Qassam was not defeated. Hamas was not defeated. The government was not defeated. And the captives were not returned through force and violence. They were returned through a negotiation that could have happened in early October if Netanyahu and the Israelis wanted that. But you can see here from the Israeli map on the outside, those are all the Gaza envelope settlements. They start from the bottom left on the border with Egypt. That's Kerem Shalom. And they go all the way up around Gaza. You can also see by this map how the Gaza envelope was built. You can see where the villages are. There's no villages behind those villages. All of the Gaza envelope kibbutz are all part of a militarized border boundary around the Gaza Strip to keep Gazans inside Gaza. And that's what their plan was from 1948 when these kibbutz were put into place. So there's been a couple of media attempts to make these maps based on those ridiculous maps from Trump. And let's take a look at number 5. This was the BBC's effort, and it shows a bit of a deeper line in Khan Yunis. The line in Khan Yunis is not that far forward. The Israelis have truncated the Morag corridor and the Magan Oz corridor, which they made a big fuss about during Gideon's chariots creating, and the mass demolitions to create those lines are not actually in the map. But you can see the buffer zone depth all around Gaza. And like Asim said, this cuts off a number of people that live inside that red zone. But what is notable about it is that the vast majority of the population will be under Hamas rule inside those inside that buffer zone, with the yellow line as a shoot to kill line. On Sunday, the defense minister said that the major challenge for Israel after the phase of returning the hostages will be the destruction of all of Hamas's terror tunnels in Gaza directly by the IDF and through an international mechanism to be established under U.S. leadership and supervision. He said that he has instructed the IDF to prepare to carry out that mission. So the yellow line will be a huge factor in that as well. If we look at the next map, Al Jazeera did another attempt to figure out where that map lined and actually put Palestinian communities and locations on that map. So this is a much better map. They came up with 58%. Would be under Israeli control. Israel says it's about 53%. But this is the thing about buffer zones. They're elastic. And everyone in Gaza knows, anyone who's visited Gaza knows, I know it very well from working there, that the buffer zones are elastic. They're not a fixed line on the ground and you can walk up to that line. They'll shoot you before that line. And then that is a permanent feature of living inside the Gaza ghetto. But yeah, like I said, the Israelis seem to say that it's 53% control. And that map shows in those areas that the Israeli forces will remain in parts, in Beit Hanun entirely, in part of Beit Lahia, in part of Shujaiya at least, and on the edge of Tufa and the Zaytun neighborhoods in Gaza City. So if we look at the next slide, Israel this was released by the defense minister earlier this week, said that they were going to put out these markers on the yellow line, that there's going to be these yellow signposts. Again, something people in Gaza know very well, people in the West Bank know very well, because this is the beginning of what the checkpoints used to look like. These markers, although in the era of the checkpoints, they were tires and filled with concrete to make these signposts, whereas this seems to be some kind of artist rendering of what these signs are going to look like, but they're free fire zones, and that is what the defense minister said, that anyone coming near these lines will be shot without question. Shoot first, ask questions later. We can see in this next clip from the Israeli military of them installing these now along the line. So you can see here an excavator bringing in the cement block, and they're topping it off with a sign. The defense minister said that any violation or attempt to cross the line will immediately be met with fire. This footage is from Monday, and you can see in the open areas where this is, and that you can see those yellow markers that are very difficult to see for the population, and they will be enforced through gunfire. Those concrete blocks are painted yellow. They're topped with a yellow metal sign. They're 3.5 meters tall, and they're being placed at a distance of 200 meters from each other along the yellow line. So you can see here with this drone footage that the Israelis are showing that this is farmland. This is in the north here, and these are destroyed groves of Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia, the olive groves in particular up there that you can see. And all of this has been made possible, which we'll see in the next slide, by the erasure of Gaza. This is a map showing 2 years from October 2023 to October 2025, satellite imagery from above. This is done by Benzion Makalas. He's an IDF adjacent mapper. He's mapping this, trying to show the accomplishment of that 2-year genocide. But if you watch it just one more time while it slides back across the screen, you can see along the border that the buffer zones are completely wiped out, and that was Israel's first intent, was to pinch the buffer zones. And then once they realized there was no red lines and the world was going to let them do whatever they wanted in Gaza, then the genocide spread from the border region all throughout Gaza. So just to show you that, and then this next slide shows you what an actual neighborhood looks like. This is Tel Sultan in Western Rafah in the Saudi neighborhood, and you can see that there's literally not a single building untouched. People listening to this, we're looking at basically ashen gray, but you can see the grid of the street. You can see where the houses were. You can see some houses partially standing, but everything completely destroyed in Rafah, and that's Israel's accomplishments in Rafah. They can't defeat the resistance. They can't defeat the Rafah brigade, but they could wipe out the entire city of Rafah with international support because there was no red lines. Also, what this large buffer zone creates, so we can see on this next map, is it creates room for the militias to operate, the pro-Israel militias, that work with the Israelis, the popular forces of Yasser Abu Shabab, that are the most well known. And you can see this map from Sky News that shows the route in from Kerem Shalom crossing where aid would come in. That's the only road that is functional, and it runs right through Abu Shabab's warehouses, and him and his gangs would unload the trucks and take the aid that was supposed to be for Palestinians, and they would sell it on the black market and drive up the price on the black market. Obviously, these Israeli collaborators are deeply unpopular in Gaza, not just because they are aligned with the military that carried out the genocide, carried out the war of annihilation against them, but also because they stole that aid that was not Israel's to distribute. It's not aid from Israel. It's Palestinian right and it's Palestinian sovereignty to be in control of that aid, which they are in the agreement. The GHF, the massacre site, they're gone. They up and left in the middle of the night. But these gangs also drove up the price of the aid by stealing the aid shipments and put it on the black market and put it the products out of reach for almost anyone in Gaza. The Resistance and Ministry of the Interior are offered a 1-week amnesty for these gangs, militias, to turn in their weapons for amnesty, and that expired just the other day. But these groups will pull and have withdrawn with the Israeli military behind this yellow line. So you have Israeli-backed forces behind that yellow line, which is something that we'll have to keep our eyes on, because if they were not behind that yellow line, the resistance and security forces in Gaza would destroy these groups in a matter of hours if they were not protected behind this shoot-to-kill line. But on the one last map here, I'll show you a map that I've shown you a number of times during this war. This is the cropland map, and you can see if you follow that yellow line that we saw in the previous maps, you can see that virtually the entire cropland of Gaza is on the eastern side of the yellow line, on the Israeli side of the yellow line. So self-sufficiency in Gaza is going to be limited deeply by this line. We know that 86% from this map, this is the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, they put the number at 86% of cropland being destroyed. And this map is made from UNOSAT imaging, but the Dropsite News spoke to Fayed Fayed. He is from the Palestine Olive Council in Gaza.
I'm gonna let this play out.
The paper
I'll
that
catch you on the flip side.
1 million out of 1.1 million olive trees in Gaza were destroyed by Israeli forces, and what remains are not groves but scattered trees in areas. These groves are primarily within that yellow line. So these are very significant sovereignty issues around that yellow line, as well as they're a line of death because they're a free fire line. And they enforce that line by firing at people who are approaching the line. So it's not just a fixed line. There's a buffer on the other side of the line, and people in Gaza know that very well. So that's the yellow line. I wanted to get you guys an understanding of where that is in this deal, because it looks like it may be a feature for the next several weeks and months that we will be following. And I just want to wrap up here with Abu Hamza. We heard from the new spokesperson for Soraya Al-Quds. Abu Hamza is the nom de guerre that Soraya Al-Quds uses for their spokespeople before and after Naji Abu Saif, who is the Abu Hamza all throughout the war, and he served from the Great March of Return through the 3 wars before the Gaza War and all through the Gaza War. He was assassinated on March 18th, and that was the attack that Israel did in the middle of the night, the massacre in the middle of the night to break the ceasefire, and everyone was at home with their families in their beds in the middle of the night, and the Israelis in a matter of minutes hit 80 civil infrastructure and governmental targets. More than 400 people were killed in their homes, including 170 children, because they were all at home asleep with their children. That includes Abu Hamza, Naji Abu Saif, who was killed along with his family, his wife, his brother, and his brother's family. That attack in March was a cowardly attack, even by the standards of Israel. So in this address, Abu Hamza said yesterday, Abu Hamza situated Soraya Al-Quds as an integral part of the Battle of Al-Aqsa Flood, of course, from the first hours, a battle that they had trained for years. And that was the most successful complex qualitative military operation in the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict. The performance of Gaza's fighters, he said, would go down in the annals of history of the national liberation movements in any era. He saluted the steadfastness and sacrifice of the people of Gaza, who showed themselves as anchors on the land and demonstrated to the world a liberation struggle's resilience, without whom there would be no resistance, he said, of the people of Gaza. He also said that the battle showed the true face of Israel to the world, a bloody and racist army without morals or values, led by a government of thugs. He said Saraya al-Quds would never have left their positions in the battle, no matter how many years it lasted. He saluted the Yemenis for their support operations and unprecedented naval blockade. He acknowledged the people of Lebanon for their sacrifice and called Hezbollah their brothers in blood, who paid an immeasurable price to support Gaza, giving a nod particularly to Saeed Hassan Nasrallah. He addressed the Iranians and their military leaders and scientists who he said were martyred on the road to Al-Quds. He gave a shout out, of course, as always, to the resistance in the West Bank as well. And he expressed the group's deep appreciation for civil defense rescue teams who, quote, pulled hope from the rubble of death with their bare hands. I think something that we, all of us watching this show, have watched for the last 2 years. Civil defense do just that. He also gave a salute to the medical workers and media workers of all types across all platforms for bringing the message of Gaza to the world, and also to the free people of the world who stood up and spoke up and demonstrated for Palestine. He said that Saraya al-Quds declares their adherence to the ceasefire agreement negotiated at Sharm el-Sheikh, as long as the enemy does too. And on the topic of disarmament, he said the resistance will continue as long as the occupation remains. So that is the resistance report for day 748 of this war ceasefire, day number 14.
Thank you so much for that, John. Yeah, I mean, the White House is still talking about how it's, it's going to happen. The disarmament, Hamas is just eventually going to surrender and give over all of their weapons, and they're on course for that. I mean, it's
yeah. Steve Witkoff said on 60 Minutes, he said that they're going to do a buyback plan for the guns, like they do in the U.S., where they give you like soccer tickets for
they do.
giving your guns. I mean, it's just, these are not serious people.
Colonial fantasy. Yeah,
they're not serious people. They don't understand what they're talking about.
No.
But it's heading for some sort of crisis, because they have said we're going to do this, and Trump has signed his name on it. So I want to get more into that, because I think what John has just done is shown us what happens when you conceive of a plan on the back of a napkin without any regard for the reality on the ground, where the population is, and so on. And politically speaking, it's the same. I mean, we talked in recent weeks about Trump's 20-point plan, which he obviously thought was very good. The fact that Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, two real estate tycoons who are also committed Zionists, were the ones conceiving, formulating, and negotiating these details, has led to a point where now they are making it up as they go along in some really crucial ways.
But just to say that what was signed in Sharm el-Sheikh is not disarmament. They signed on the first, the only thing that Qassam and Hamas agreed to was the first part, what we're seeing right now. There's no signatures of anyone. When you saw that performative signature signing, that was not on all 20 points. That was only on the initial points, which are Israeli withdrawal, return of the captives, those and aid coming in. The second stage has not been negotiated yet. And from Hamas's perspective, they're not going to sign a disarmament agreement. So I just wanted to say that that's separate from what you saw, the scrawled signatures in that performance in Sharm el-Sheikh is not signed related to disarmament. That comes next.
Well, that's an important reminder, John, and that's the way you see it. That's the way I see it. I'm sure that's the way most reasonable people see it. But that's not the way the United States and its allies, and certainly the Israelis, are proceeding. They are proceeding as if the commitment to disarmament, and Trump has said this repeatedly when challenged on this, they've agreed to do it. They said they'd do it.
Right.
You're pointing out correctly, they never said they'd do it. But they are acting as if they are. And that's where I think the real danger lies. So why don't we get into some of these headlines and stories that show sort of this train speeding towards a cliff edge, at least the way I see it, and then we can get what people's thoughts are. So, I mean, one of the key headlines in the Israeli press and also in the US press is this idea of the US becoming more closely involved than ever in direct micromanagement of what Israel is doing. If we look at this headline from CNN, we can see the headline there, Trump's babysitting of Netanyahu puts the US in charge on Gaza. And the term they're actually using is babysitting, using Netanyahu's nickname. And they say an American official called it babysitting, a revolving door of the highest-ranking members of the Trump administration to make sure Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, frequently known as Bibi, sticks to the U.S. brokered ceasefire deal. And then they quote Vice President J.D. Vance, who has just returned from there. He says, quote, "We intend to stay engaged every single day to make sure peace takes hold," Vance said at a news conference. Unveiling a new U.S. coordination center to monitor and assess real-time developments of the Gaza ceasefire. And they say the event is being managed by an external... and then you have former Israeli Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot saying the event, meaning the ceasefire, is being managed by an external entity, by the Americans, and this is a very problematic matter, Eisenkot told Israeli radio Khan. Quote, "As we progress with the agreement, more international forces will enter, and this will limit the IDF." So you can see where the Israeli fears are about this so-called international stabilization force, which an American general is trying to put together. So, but, you know, what is the plan? It's not clear. Let's look at the next headline, Tamara, which is from the New York Times just earlier this week. The headline, "Nations hesitate to send troops to Gaza, fearing clashes with Hamas." And this article says that the ceasefire that came into force last week rests on some key assumptions. I think that's important to underline that Hamas militants give up their weapons and that an international troop presence keeps the peace as Israel withdraws its military from the enclave. But the countries that might make up that force are skittish about committing soldiers who could potentially come into direct conflict with Hamas while it is still an armed group, diplomats and other people familiar with the deliberations say. And then they say also that there has been little progress on when the force might be assembled because of confusion over the force's mission, which appears to be the most serious stumbling block. Are these just observers? Are they peacekeepers? Or are they going to go out and fight Hamas? That's not clear. The New York Times says their main concern is that their troops, meaning these potential participant countries, should all of the countries, that prospect alone would be reason enough to back out of it, the officials said. Then they say a Turkish government statement stated that President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that Turkey would join a task force that it described as overseeing the ceasefire. It was unclear whether he was referring directly to the stabilization force. Some in Israel's leadership are likely to be skeptical about Turkey playing a role. We'll come back to that too. Yeah. President Prabowo Subianto, this is still in the New York Times, of Indonesia, said during a speech at the United Nations last month that his country was ready to deploy 20,000 or more troops, quote, to help secure peace in Gaza and other war zones. Now, this is still in the same New York Times article. They say, asked about how Hamas would disarm, Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's son-in-law and one of the architects of the ceasefire, told CBS's 60 Minutes last week, quote, "So in order for that to occur, we need to create the International Stabilization Force, and then the International Stabilization Force needs to create a local Palestinian government." So this is a bunch of pie in the sky at this point. Because how are they going to do that? They're not going to be able to go in and create a government against the wish, a collaborator government, which is the word that is not stated, but is clearly what's meant.
Does this mean that Blair is, where's Blair?
He's not mentioned anymore. We haven't seen Tony Blair or the Board of Peace.
Right.
Talk of the Board of Peace seems to have dropped out for now too.
And also, just to note before we go on, the troops that will get shot at, they'll be shot at by Israel. If we look at any peacekeeping mission anywhere near Israel, the main the person shooting at them in Lebanon, it's the Israelis.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem to be of concern to Kushner.
But the point of these things is that they haven't even talked about them. Kushner and Witkoff were on 60 Minutes on Sunday night, and they were pressed on questions, and they just these things don't exist. They were not part of the conversations of the ceasefire, and it's all basically based around Kushner and Witkoff making phone calls to the leaders of the Gulf states. There's no piece of paper that says this is the blueprint for what it would look like. So they're just calling the heads of these governments, and that's why he said that they were successful, is because their business contacts let them have direct lines into the leaders of these countries, and they phone them and say, would you put up some troops? But they don't say, here's the blueprint, here's what it looks like. So it's just the whole thing is very Trump.
Yeah, but there is still quite it's more than just words, because as I mentioned, the Americans are putting significant numbers of people on the ground, albeit in Israel, which is unprecedented because Israel has always rejected having a direct U.S. military presence, with some small exceptions, like, for example, manning Patriot or THAAD batteries, which is sort of a technical role. But this shows the extent to which Israel is more and more dependent on the U.S. and really a vassal of the U.S., where the U.S. is directly in charge. So we have in the next article, Tamara, from Ynet, the headline there is Netanyahu draws red line against Turkish troops in Gaza. I'll say more about that, but that's not what I wanted to get from this article. This article says that the U.S. has established an international command center in the Kiryat Gat industrial zone, that's inside Israel, staffed by about 200 American troops alongside representatives from Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, Denmark, and Germany. Vice President Vance visited the base, where a press conference was held under Israeli and American flags in the presence of U.S. and British generals. Behind the podium stood large signs reading Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza. So again, this shows, you are right, John, to point out that all of this poses real questions for Palestinian sovereignty, but also Israeli sovereignty. Here we see now the pretense of Israel as an independent state, the mask torn off that. It is an extension of these imperial states and, one of the vassals, along with Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, and Germany, the other countries mentioned there, who are all, in my opinion, on a par, however you want to interpret that the UAE and Jordan are as great as Germany. Maybe you could interpret it that way.
Some of the terms that Vance at this visit yesterday that Vance had in Israel is that he said that we don't want to be a protectorate. We don't want Israel to be a vassal state. We don't want Israel to be a client state. He's kind of like saying all the things.
Yeah, but you don't say that unless that's the reality.
Don't think of an elephant. Do not think of an elephant. Yeah.
He also said, I'm not here to monitor a toddler.
Sounds like that's what he's there to do. But on the point of let's go to the next piece, Tamara. Again, this is interesting. This appeared this morning from the New York Times. Vance says international security force will take lead on disarming Gaza. Well, that's very interesting. And they say that, but he said, and it doesn't give any details about that, what that would look like. And they say that the U.S., big believer in the United Nations, by the way, U.S. always huge supporter of the UN, may actually seek a UN Security Council mandate for this force.
Oh, wow.
And they say here in the New York Times article that in remarks to reporters, Mr. Vance cautioned that the task of disarming Hamas, which the militant group has long opposed, was, quote, going to take some time, and it's going to depend a lot on the composition of that force. So two things in there. And it cannot, well, because these are fresh comments. Two things are hidden, or maybe not so hidden in that statement. One is a recognition that this is not something that they can just do anytime soon. And the other is an admission that they don't have a force yet. They don't know what that force is going to look like. We mentioned earlier that Turkey had said it would send forces. And I alluded that Netanyahu has rejected that. If we look at the next story from the Times of Israel, Tamara, which you have there, and this reports comments allegedly made by Netanyahu in his talks with Vance and other U.S. officials. The headline there, Netanyahu said to insist PA have no role in Gaza as U.S. pushes Trump plan to end war. Now, it says that one of the things not new is that Israel doesn't want the Palestinian Authority back in Gaza. But it says that Netanyahu also spelled out three other red lines to the Americans. One, no Turkish presence in Gaza. Neither the Palestinian Authority nor Hamas playing any governing role the day after the war. It's interesting that they're talking about the day after being at some time in the future.
Right.
Presumably, this should already be the day after, but the day after is still to come. And the third, that Netanyahu is said to have insisted that a full IDF withdrawal would only take place after Hamas is fully disarmed and the Strip demilitarized. So you can see there the huge minefields that are being set up by the so-called Trump plan, where Israel is just going to dig in and say that as long as there is a single rifle in Gaza, we're staying forever. So this is setting us up for a lot of trouble in the future. Now, just two more short items on this. So we've ruled out Turkey because Israel says no Turkey, right? They can't come in. The Arab states, Jordan, Egypt. I mean, it's not even a week ago that we were told that Egypt would be the leading force in the stabilization force. The name of Egypt has disappeared. Jordan and the UAE aren't being mentioned anymore. They were mentioned earlier on. So who could it be? Well, according to Israel Hayom, the very right-wing Israeli newspaper, and is it still owned by Miriam Adelson?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is still owned by Miriam Adelson. As of this morning, according to Israel Hayom, troops from Azerbaijan and Indonesia are expected to form the core of the International Stabilization Force to be deployed in Gaza. Now, where this is coming from, I don't know. They just seem to be pulling new names out of the hat every day. One thing that can be said about Azerbaijan is it is a very close ally of Israel and of Turkey, by the way. Azerbaijan is the main supplier of oil to Israel. About 30% of Israel's oil imports come from Azerbaijan through the BTC pipeline across Turkish territory, which Turkey has never shut down. So this is the fuel that fuels the Israeli jets, the tanks, the bulldozers that committed this genocide in Gaza. I don't know if Azerbaijan has agreed to this, but that's the latest. And of course, Indonesia, that seems to be, their name seems to come up a lot in terms of acting as kind of like, the Muslim country that will do Israel's bidding. They were talked about as a dumping ground for Palestinians expelled from Gaza, and now they're being talked about as coming in to do Israel's dirty work. But neither Indonesia nor Azerbaijan are going to disarm Hamas. And the final item, I don't know, John, do you want to say something about that?
No, none of them are going to disarm Hamas. Israel, we just watched them spend 700 days fully backed by literally $30 billion in U.S. weaponry that was delivered daily by plane, by ship. They were unable to do that. They've killed unknown number of Gaza's population, but more than 12% killed, arrested, or maimed. There's no other force that's going in to do this. The only force that would fail as well. There's nothing, even the Americans, there's nothing American soldiers have that Israeli soldiers don't have. So there's no thing where the Americans go into Gaza.
And they've ruled that out.
Yeah.
Vance ruled that out again. Both Trump and Vance have said no U.S. troops will be going into Gaza.
Yeah, you're not disarming them. That's just not. 700 days. Like, we have a lot of evidence that Israel cannot do that. And even their last operations, they were not fighting the resistance. They said specifically, we're fighting infrastructure. Because they're not fighting the resistance. There was a security assessment released in Israel yesterday that talks about 20,000 Qassam fighters, which is, according to some estimates, there was only 26,000 going into the war. I would have put the number higher, closer to 40,000, but they're talking about, the Israelis themselves talking about 20,000 Qassam fighters. So.
If this were to happen,
it's not serious.
Even if an international force were to go in, right, and they managed to cobble something together and even get it a UN mandate, I think that the resistance would be extremely reluctant and would avoid, as far as it could to fire a shot at them. Okay, they would not want to fight with them, but the point is they wouldn't have to, because none of these soldiers are not gonna, this international force are not gonna start going down tunnels and trying to destroy the resistance. So the resistance would just be there, and they would continue to be in effective control, and these guys would just, I don't know, be doing traffic patrols or doing the type of...
already out doing traffic patrols. They did that immediately. As soon as the ceasefire came, they're out in the streets, looking after the society. I'm just saying they might even let them come in. Yeah, they'd welcome.
Hamas might even let a force come in and say, yeah, sure, you can stand around. Maybe you can help, I don't know, escort aid I don't know. They could find something to do with them. But the point is that the resistance will still be there, and nobody's going to be able to build an alternative to indigenous Palestinian governance against the will of the resistance and the people in Gaza. But my fear is this. This is where I fear this is all heading. And that is that the inability, the fact that Hamas and the resistance haven't agreed to disarm, that there is no way to do it by force. The default is going to be maintaining the siege and the blockade, as they have done after every single war, except now the situation in Gaza is much worse. So to continue to starve and punish the civilian population in order to try to force concessions from the resistance. That is my fear. And what we see, on the one hand, we see all these stories about U.S. micromanaging of the situation, effectively telling the Israelis what they can and can't do, and telling them to knock it off when they did that massacre last Sunday in Gaza. But at the same time, the Americans are not telling the Israelis open the crossings and let in the 6,000 trucks that UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees, says are waiting now on the frontiers of Gaza. And why aren't the Americans doing that? Because I think they are going to continue to use aid, food, medicine, formula for babies as their weapon of choice, and really their only weapon, because they don't have any others.
Yeah.
And so this is why we have to be extremely aware that this war, this genocide against the people in Gaza is not over by any means. They are just going from bombs to baby bottles as their weapons.
And just to be clear, Qassam, the resistance has been very clear all throughout the years, not just this genocide, that foreign force will be considered an occupier. They have been very clear on that. They have never been the ones to say we want a foreign protection force when that was a suggestion over the course of years. They don't want a foreign force. They consider that an occupying force as well. So for this to happen, they would have to change a long-held, very clear position on this. And I just think that Trump doesn't know that, and Kushner doesn't know that. And they didn't even bring like their Arabists, or something like that. They didn't bring their cartographers. They just made these phone calls in rooms. They talked about it, Kushner, Witkoff, and Ron Dermer, the three of them sitting in a room and picking up the phone and calling this leader and that leader. I don't think they don't have the capacity or the seriousness to look at the details of how to execute this. They didn't bring in State Department people, right? They hate the State Department people. So they don't have anything that resembles a professionalized accounting of what needs to be done and how that would be put into place.
Precisely.
So, yeah. So just one last item, which is the other element, which we haven't talked about much today, is the West Bank, which Israel is moving to annex, and they held a vote on that. I mean, just sort of a preliminary vote in the Knesset. And Trump said, and we're going to hear J.D. Vance in a moment, that Israel will not annex the West Bank. And I think that is a nod to the Arab Gulf and other Arab regimes involved in this, for whom that's important, because they're very committed, the Arab states, to the so-called two-state solution, which they see as the only way of preserving Israel, something that they're very committed to as allies of Israel. And so we know that Trump and the far right have never been committed to a two-state solution, but they do seem to be now making that nod with these comments against Israeli moves to annex the West Bank. Let's watch J.D. Vance's statement in the last few hours.
About it. Somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no practical significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it.
And what's interesting about that, Tamara, if you can show the tweet again. This was actually put out by the White House's official rapid response account. So they wanted people to hear this message that J.D. Vance had given. And when he said it was a stupid move, it was a political stunt, he was talking about that vote in the Knesset. So just, it's interesting. We have not heard language as strong as this from the Trump administration before about annexation. And if Miriam Adelson's $100 million was meant to pay Trump to approve the annexation of the rest of the West Bank, just as he approved the annexation of East Jerusalem and of the Golan Heights, then she may be wanting her money back. But we'll see how long they stick to this position.
Yeah, and the other vote that was passed, I think I mentioned this in the report, was the also annexation of all of the land of the colony of Ma'ale Adumim, which is one of the biggest settlement colonies in the West Bank. So they want all the West Bank plus more. I mean, they want it all. That's all. That's been the national ideology for 80 years, of course. But yeah, I don't. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, what the response will be, and the next steps. I mean, everything, as always, hinges on Gaza, and all eyes have to remain on Gaza.
Don't let up. Don't let up. Be out there talking about Gaza every day, because as we heard from Asim, they have not lifted the siege. They've not stopped the starvation. They've not stopped. They've not allowed in the equipment that's needed to rebuild. They've not allowed in shelters. None of this is happening so far. You just can't let that fade into obscurity.
No, or be normalized and go back to the way things were even before the genocide, which was already 16, 17 years of a blockade and siege. So. All right. Well, I think that's it. Was there anything else we wanted?
That's it for me. But I do want to come back to Asa and see if there has been any update on Dr. Rahmeh and her situation, since there was an ongoing hearing.
Well, there's a small update. It seems that hearing has concluded with a decision to have a hearing. The date hasn't been set, so it's bad news in the sense that it hasn't been thrown out, which is what her lawyers were demanding. And it seems like there's a retrial, as it were, although it's not a criminal case. It's a tribunal, a medical practitioner's licensed tribunal, but it is sort of quasi judicial. So it will be going ahead at some point in the future. There's no date on that yet. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I know that you'll keep us posted. Let's take a quick look at the website. There's so much that we published this week. There we go. Another Dave Cronin special. Child rights champion promotes German-Israeli arms trade. Thanks, as always, to our colleague Dave for dutifully and diligently tracking.
He digs up so much hidden corruption and hypocrisy. His reporting is among my favorite to read, because he just really pulls the mask off all of these institutions, particularly the EU, that claim to be forces of human rights and development and love and apple pie.
Right. Thank you to Dave. We published a few features. There is this beautiful one right at the top. Displacement begins with a scissors cut. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I don't have my glasses. I can't read who the author is. I forgot already. Isra, is it? Thank you, Isra. I still can't. I need my glasses. Anyway, it's gorgeous. It's this beautiful personal narrative of decisions that Isra, the author, took in the midst of being displaced, and I might hopefully read that one next week on the news report. It was just beautiful. Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out the piece by Omar Zahza, who we had on a month or two ago to talk about the role of big tech in his book, about the role of big tech that we talked about, terms of servitude. And this is a piece on the deal to take over TikTok by ultra-Zionist co-founder of Oracle, Larry Ellison, who's also behind the takeover of, who also has recently bought CBS and installed ultra-Zionist Barry Weiss as the head of CBS News. So I think this is a really important piece to understand the continued efforts to censor and suppress the vast popular uprising of support for Palestinian rights and revulsion at Israel.
Yeah, Omar's book is incredible, and he is always tracking how Silicon Valley and big tech and the corporate media are trying to suppress information about Palestine and keep giving Israel a platform. So yeah, check that one out. We have so many things on the website at this moment in time, so many more to come. Be sure that you're on our email list in order to get updates and get our daily email digest. Ali, who do we have to thank this week?
Too many people to thank, as always, but we are so grateful to each and every person who watches, listens, reads, shares the work that we do, who comments. We don't say it enough, but I always go back and read the comment. I read some of the comments during the live stream, but I go back and read some of the comments afterwards, and I get a lot of ideas from what people put in the comments. So thank you for all of that. Do leave a comment if you have something to say. We always do our best to read them. And we're grateful to everyone who makes a donation to do all this work that you see, everything we publish, all the news and analysis you see here, the support we're able to give to our colleagues in Gaza and across Palestine, and make sure that we're good colleagues to them and support their work. All of that is enabled by the donations of our viewers, listeners, and readers. So we're very grateful, and I'm just going to name a few. Ahsan, Francesca, Kira, Jordan, Imtiaz, Marilyn, Ahmed, Philip, Brian, Jenny, Laurie, Clint, Tijan, Susan, Armando, and I want to say a special thanks to Eddie, who sent a donation for the Electronic Intifada that he said was specifically in honor of my mother, and that really meant a great deal to me. Thank you, Eddie.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, everyone. And you can always go to the Donate Now link at the top of electronicintifada.net or down in the YouTube box below. And I want to say thank you, of course, to Tamara Nassar for directing and producing, to Ellie Gerzon for social media production, Pierre Loisel for radio production, everyone at the Electronic Intifada, and on behalf of myself, Tamara, John, Ali, and Asa, thank you all, and we'll see you next week.
We go hard for Palestine. We escalate for Palestine. We fight for Palestine. We give it everything we got. We do not work with the police. We do not point people out to the police. We do not lay hands on our comrades. When we go hard for our people, you ain't staying out the way. If you ain't with it,